Hey.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to another night of Women's World of Fishing Monday Night Takeover. We're going to give a couple of minutes to let everybody sign on from all the feeds. And, Angie and I were talking and coming off of an interview with Pam Martin Wells. Yeah, we're kind of like, okay, well, what do we do next? And Angie said, well, maybe we should just go ahead and retire. And it was tempting. So we kind of went the other route and we decided to take it all the way back to the beginning and start fishing. We're just going to start all over. But it if you did not see that interview from last week, um, I highly recommend that you watch that. Um, I watched it again, and Angie, you said you did as well, right?
Oh yeah, I watched it a couple times and I'm actually thinking about I haven't mentioned this yet, but I'm thinking about releasing the audio from that on next week's episode of the Woman Angler and Adventure just so more people can hear it because it was so good and so valuable. Um and then tomorrow I've got a quick interview with Alyssa Johnson coming out that I interviewed her backstage at the Cane River tournament, so excited about that.
Nice. I fished with Alyssa, and she's an amazing girl. So
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear that. That'll be amazing. But I had to go back and watch that interview with Pam because um like there were several things like in that interview that I had that I had thought about whenever we were doing the interview, and I wanted to really go back and process it. Um, but there were very specific things about her perception with the being versatile, and you have to be willing to um, you know, fish outside of your comfort zone, but also fishing your strengths. And I have thought so much about that in the last week. Um, you know, I think that is really important for each individual angler. Um, and I have made a promise to myself that I am going to I have taken that to heart, and that is my goal, is to work on that, to find what that is for me, because I think that is going to be so different for everybody. So that is my new goal. So Pam, I don't know if you're watching this, but if you are, thank you. I'm going to take that and run with it. So I'm sure we're out to all the feeds, and thank you everybody who submitted questions for this. We had kind of started on this because this is what people wanted a month and a half ago, and we had gone focused on tournaments and stuff, and the LBAA is kind of resting right now. So this is a perfect opportunity for us to do this. And so we're taking it back, and we're giving you kind of the beginner series. And I hope that we're able to do it justice, because I this is going to be a community thing. And so Angie, kind of what I mean, we've talked about it and how much people have wanted this. I mean, the message boards, the questions. How are you feeling about this series?
Yeah, I think it's always good to cover this topic and make sure you're not leaving anybody out. But also, it never hurts to kind of go back to the beginning, like you mentioned earlier, and just start fresh. I actually did that this year with bass fishing. I went back and I watched all the beginner videos on, all the different line types and which one's best for what, and just like I just started like I'm going to pretend like I haven't ever bass fished before. What do I need to know? Cuz sometimes I think you can miss stuff too depending on how you learned and who taught you, or if you learned on your own. And so it was kind of fun going back and watching all the beginner videos just to, fill in some of the gaps that I probably have, So,
Right. And I mean, we forget stuff. I mean, over the winter, that's kind of when we really, really start watching a whole lot. And every winter, I'm like, oh, yeah, I totally forgot about that. So it's always a good refresher. And I think that, you know, you with the Woman Angler and Adventurer and your podcast, I mean, you have worked so hard and for so long in this industry to get women, into the outdoors in general, to get their adventure on, to go out and just enjoy the outdoors. And, with this, like with the with our show, like we are focused on fishing, and that's why I'm actually really glad to see that this is the type of show that most of the people want, is because it's encouraging to show that people are wanting to get out in the outdoors, women who are wanting to teach their kids, you know um, that's encouraging to me because we want to see more people going to the LBAA.
right.
And so this is a great start for people to start learning. I can't prepare you to go and win at the LBAA. Pam Martin Wells can prepare you for that. But hopefully, we're hoping to give you, the basics, and um to get you out there to have fun. That's kind of what we're hoping, and to get you thinking that there is a place for you fishing, and it doesn't matter what you're wanting to target. It doesn't matter where you live. Well, it kind of doesn't matter where you live, but there is a place for you, outside and outdoors to do this. And it's just really encouraging, to see this. So,
Real
um,
quick, we have a few comments already coming in. So,
oh,
Matt Dillon said that my headset already sounds better. It's funny you say that because Barbara and I just went over that at the very beginning, and it was just one little setting I had to change in
mhm.
StreamYard to fix that issue. So I'm glad it's sounding better. I do have kind of a crazy headset I wear when I'm out fishing if I'm having to work at the same time. It's kind of similar. This is actually what the truck drivers wear, but it
That's
cuts out like all the wind noise. So if I have to take a call for work and I'm out fishing, it sounds like I'm in my office. So it's kind of a cool
so
thing. I'm sure I
so
look a little funny, but
will you actually be up up front fishing while you're on a call or something?
oh yeah,
Oh dear.
yeah, you got to be ready.
Well, yeah, I'm just waiting for you to just set the hook and fall right over the side of the boat.
That's usually when I get a bite is when I'm on the phone. So,
Sure.
hey, I'll take it.
Well, that's
Um,
true.
And then Ryan, who works with me at Freedom Boat Club, he's down on Tim's Ford Lake, but he said, I remember my pocket fisherman. Now I'm really dating myself. I think those are still around, those little pocket fishermen.
Oh, yeah, I think they are. Let me see. I'm trying to get, well, the Twitter usually comes up sometimes. It does, like in the beginning, and then later in the show it doesn't. And then Fancy Pants, hey lady,
Yeah,
happy
hey,
Monday
Fancy
to
Pants.
you. And she did get her package from Big Sexy Baits, and a few extra things that I've put in there for her. Um, so that's good. We don't have a giveaway this week. Hopefully, we will next week. We're still trying to figure out what will be the next thing. I will say there are a few things I'm hoping to be able to announce soon that are going to be pretty exciting. So that will actually go along, hopefully, will actually go along with this series, and might help with the giveaways as well. So we'll see. It's
Oh, and
always
then
good to.
just real quick, sorry, before we get into it, we have a special guest who may be popping on with us tonight, Clay Groves from the Fish Nerds podcast. He does a lot of guiding out in New Hampshire and does a lot of introductory, like teaching people how to fish. And he's got kind of an interesting method that I'm hoping he's going to be able to pop on and talk a little bit about. So,
He actually he is on, Angie, but it looks like he popped on, and but I don't know it. Oh, there he is.
so
Are
if
you
he's
good?
on, if we could bring him on right away and then he can talk about that, that would be good.
Yeah. Are you good to come on now, Clay? You good? Okay, he says he's good. So
Okay,
we'll
awesome.
go ahead and we'll bring him on because we're not sure how long he has, and then we'll get back to the questions that came through um, from the messaging and the email. So, hey Clay, thank you so much for coming. How are you?
I'm in the show. It's cool.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Well, thank you. I apologize. I am in my car waiting for my child to finish play practice. I don't have a lot of time, but I'm excited to be here. I know Angie. I don't know you.
That's quite all right. You're gonna know me very quickly. I'm gonna request you as a friend on Facebook, and we'll be fast friends.
Best friend. I love it.
Yeah, so Clay, I wanted you to pop on because I know you have kind of a different method for when you take out new anglers to get them out there and fishing, and I wanted you to talk about that real quick when you have while you have a couple minutes.
Oh, sure. Well, so the traditional way to take a new person fishing would be like putting a worm under a bobber and tossing it out, and watching the bobber go underwater. And that's how kids fish, right? We've all done that as kids. And invariably, what happens is when you fish with a bobber with kids, is they don't learn anything. They're throwing the line in the water, and when the bobber goes in the water, they might reel the fish in, they might not. They don't set hooks. Fish get hooked a lot. They bleed a lot. You kill a lot of fish, and I don't. As a guide, I think it bodes poorly on a guide if fish are getting killed and you're not eating. So what I started doing a few years ago is fishing with like telescoping fishing rods. You can buy them for like $4 at Walmart. They're dirt cheap, and just attaching a piece of line and a jig, and then that's what we fish with. I switched recently to Tenkara rods because they look prettier, a little more sensitive, and when people are paying a lot of money to go fishing, people like to use prettier gear. So I switched to Tenkara rods, but I don't fish Tenkara style. Tenkara fishers do not like the way I fish because I'll use just a regular piece of monofilament with a jig, and I'll put a worm on the jig. And what I found is, especially for perch and panfish fishing, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, but for perch and panfish fishing, I find that kids quickly adapt to setting hooks faster, and so they end up catching dozens and dozens of perch and bluegills and that sort of thing because they're not dealing with a reel, they're not dealing with other things, they're just setting hooks, and they catch
Hmm.
a lot of fish, which is great, and it's for me, by the way, a lot of fun because if I have 5 or 6 kids on my pontoon boat fishing, I'm not dealing with tangles either, which is wonderful because new fishers also tangle a lot, as you know. So
Right.
I find that technique to be really, really simple and effective. In fact, a couple days ago, I took a 100-year-old man out fishing for his last fishing trip. That's how his kids booked it. His kid it
Oh,
was 80, and his kid
wow.
called me up and he says, "Hey, Clay, my dad's in a nursing home. He's been in nursing home since before COVID. Hasn't been outside in 15 months. He just turned 100. Can you take him fishing one more time before he dies?" And I said, "Sure. One last
Makes me
hurrah." So
sad.
yeah, it was pretty great. So we wheeled my pontoon boat has a front deck on it that you can pull the chairs out of. So I pulled the chairs out. We put his wheelchair on the boat, and we took him out fishing. And he caught about a dozen big yellow perch on a Tenkara rod, and it was really fun because he can feel the bite, which you can't feel with
Right.
a bobber. And a guy like that can't cast because he can't control his arms, and neither can new fishers. It's a real skill that needs to be developed over time. And so the skill we work on is proper hook sets and landing fish safely. So he caught about a dozen fish. And my favorite thing was he couldn't barely hold the rod because he's 100. And he's fighting the fish and he's holding the rod with two hands. He's going, "You bastards! I'm going to die, you bastards! And I'll fight like bastards!" And he was just the funniest little coot. I liked him a lot.
Oh,
We got a bunch of fish, but I fish with kids like that all the time. And we catch all kinds of fish that way. We can catch trout in rivers that way. We can catch trout in lakes, and of course, bass, sunfish, perch, pickerel. Every fish will take a line that way. But what they learn is they learn how to set hooks. And then when you take a kid who can set a hook and you level them up to a reel, now they're not focused on how to hook a fish. They're focused on how to work that reel. Now they can cast that reel. And I never use the Zebco push button reels with anybody because I can't untangle the stupid things. I like an open bail so I can deal with the tangles when they do happen, and they happen every time you get a new fish on the boat. But they're not focused on hooking the fish anymore. Now when they get a bite, they instinctively set a hook, and you never had to teach it because the fish taught them how to do that. And that's a huge leap in their fishing ability. So if you switch from worms to lures, all that comes with that hook setting ability, and it's really great. And you catch a lot of fish, and again, you don't kill as many fish that way, which for me, that's a big factor.
right.
So that's my style, and it's a lot of fun.
So, what's the youngest one that you'll be able to take, or
On
that
a
would
10
be able to
car
do it?
or collapsible rod, if
Mhm.
they can stand up and hold the rod, I've taken 1-year-olds out and they've caught lots of fish,
Wow.
and they do it
Wow.
well. Once they catch a fish or two, they figure it out, and they become uh, effective anglers, and sometimes more effective than their parents using the same technique because their parents aren't used to that, but they don't know any better, and so they're just putting
That
a
would
line
be
in the water and
embarrassing.
catching. Yeah, but they're not embarrassed, and the parents are thrilled because they get a fish on the
Mhm.
boat. Their kid got their
Right.
first fish, and oftentimes, where we're fishing in New Hampshire, we have a trophy program for catch and release, and I take them to trophy perch waters. And last year, I had 9 kids under 7 get trophy patches from the state of New Hampshire for the perch they caught.
Wow.
Or perch 14 inches is trophy in New Hampshire. 10 inches of a bluegill is a trophy fish, and 8 inches for a pumpkin seed. And to get a kid their first fish, a trophy-sized fish that they caught themselves, which they can do this with this method, is pretty fun, and the parents love it. And of course, as a guide, that means more money in my pocket because they're going to tip me better. And
Right.
I like
Absolutely.
tips. Yeah.
And I'll tell you that getting the kids to catch fish, I mean, that's the most important thing. Otherwise, they're going to get bored and they're not going to want to go back. That
That's why I don't
catching
bring
fish
kids
for
bass
kids.
fishing. Yeah.
Right, right. I mean, yeah, it makes total sense. I'm about bored with it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't like not catching fish. I'm like you two. I want to put fish in the boat. I don't care how big or small they are, and I value each fish, so we have a good time.
Hey Clay, Fancy Pants Fishing is watching. She's asking, where all can you fish with that style of fishing? Do you just drop it in the middle of the lake or river, or do you fish structure, banks, trees, etc.?
Oh, great question. So in a river, you fish structure, of course. You find those pocket waters in the river where you can tell fish live. We're fishing shallow. You're fishing your rod is 9 feet long and your fishing line is 9 feet long. So you got about 18 feet total of reach. So not a lot of reach. And I like to bring kids where they can see the fish. So when we fish, like I fish in a pontoon boat, so we're usually fishing about water that's about 2 feet deep. Excuse me one second. We fish in water about 2 feet deep at the edge of weed beds. And when you drop that line next to the weeds, the kids can see the fish. And I keep a bucket of cheap polarized glasses on the boat, just like cheap Walmart glasses, so the kids can put those on, and they can catch the glare in the water, and they can see the fish that they're fishing for. So fish structure and fish where the fish live. That method does not work in the middle of a lake when it's 100 feet deep. You're not going to catch anything. Although kids will try, they'll put the line in the water, and they might get lucky, but the odds are not in their favor in that sense. And our job as guides or as parents is to do the homework and find out where the fish live and go to the fish. And of course, as a guide, I know the lake I fish on. I know where they live, so we usually stop on top of the fish the first stop. In fact, it gets so to the point where like on the first stop we catch a whole bunch of fish, and they want to try somewhere else. And if they don't catch fish in the first minute and a half, they are confused on why it's not working.
Right. And then if they go back out and they're not catching fish, they're going to think that their mom and dad are complete, you know, idiots. Like, well, let's go out with Clay because he knows how to catch fish. Y'all don't know nothing, you know. And then they're going to have to pay you to take
Absolutely,
them
they
out.
give me more. Yeah, and I'll take their money every time, and they have a blast because by the way, the other thing about guiding on a pontoon boat is my pontoon boat can go 30 miles an hour, which means we fish for an hour, and then we put the tube in the water and throw the kids on the tube and drag them around the lake for an hour, and then we fish for another hour and repeat that until they're done for the day. So that's kind of the fun for my game is pontoon boat fishing. It's so versatile in what you can do on that boat that
Hmm.
we can do all the fun stuff you do on a pontoon boat: swimming, fishing, tubing, whatever. And make it not so much for young fishers about the fishing, but about the
Quest.
whole adventure. Yeah, you've got a Quest
You
pontoon boat that you're showing us, Angie.
you
Yeah,
don't you
I
don't
don't
use
have it currently. I've got the center console Key West this year, but we'll definitely be going back to a pontoon at some point down the line because they're just so comfortable.
They are so comfortable. Of course, your center console is a beautiful boat, so nothing to complain about.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah, nothing to complain about there. That's my dream boat. If I lived in bigger waters, that's probably what I would want to be on. But I'm in New Hampshire. We're on big glacial lakes, and there's not a lot of waves, and you don't need the big center console boats to fish those waters. We do trolling for lake trout and salmon too, but that's less about teaching someone to fish because they're just reeling fish in every so often, so they're not learning a whole lot.
Right. Well, thank you, Clay, for coming on. That's such great insight and perfect for this topic that we're covering tonight. So, really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I
absolutely.
hate that I can't stay. I wish I had scheduled time for this, but I I do love what you do, Angie. I love your podcast. I'm so proud of the work you do. I see what you traveling around doing all this stuff, and I think it's
Oh, thank
important, and I value that. So well done.
Thank you, Clay, and thanks for what you do with the Fish Nerds podcast. Everybody, go check that out. It's a fun show, and yeah, maybe we'll plan something down the line and have you on a little bit longer next time.
Yeah,
Yeah, just give
absolutely.
me
I
more than a
agree.
10 minutes notice, and I'm in.
Yeah.
We will. Thank you so much, Clay.
All right, bye. Nice meeting you.
You too. I'm going to request you on Facebook.
Oh, do it. I need more friends. I only have 3. So bye.
Well, you got 4 now. Thanks,
Yeah,
Clay.
best day of my life. All right, bye.
Bye bye.
All right.
Wow,
Good
that's
stuff.
really, yeah, that's neat. I mean, that's something I would have never even thought because I, I didn't learn with a cane pole. I mean, even did you?
No, no, but that's so smart to get
Excellent.
kids learning how to feel the bite because that's so important when you're
Hmm.
bobber fishing, which that's how I grew up fishing and how I started off with a closed reel, a little Johnson. I can't remember what model it was, but you just click the button, throw that bobber out. Wasn't even a slip bobber, it was a fixed bobber,
Hmm.
and then you just wait to see that bobber go down, and then you try to set the hook. And so I
Right.
think that's maybe I'd be a better bass angler today if I started off that way.
Yeah, let's blame our families for the way they taught us. That's right. It's their fault. No, but it is interesting the way that and I know that we had messaged back and forth about this, like the way that fishing brings people together. Like you and I mean, we, you lived in Minnesota. I grew up in Kentucky. We you know, we had family members that had taught us. I can't remember who was it that you grew up fishing with. Was it
It was my
your
dad. My dad
your
had
dad?
little
Yeah.
Lumina Craft. He still has the same boat I grew up fishing in with the 40 horse
Yeah.
Johnson motor, same motor. But yeah, that's
I
my
thought it was.
and my mom would go out as well, and my brother. So it was always like a family activity for us.
Yeah, so we both had that, the father figure, cuz I mean, I'm super blessed. When I'm not fishing the LBAA, like I still tournament fish with my father. And there's just not a lot of women who can still say that. Like I'm super blessed. If you're watching this, dad, don't get a big head. But I still do that, but we grew up in different places chasing different species, you know, coming full circle, doing different things, meeting. Well, we actually started talking and then, meeting, social media, meet for the first time at an LBAA tournament. And so you never know like how fishing can bring people together, and social media gives people so much opportunity for knowledge and stuff like this. And I would never think in this time that we would be telling people to go out and get that kind of pole. You know what I mean? Like seriously. I mean, I'm I'm stunned, and I'm so glad that he said that because that is something I would have never even thought of.
Same
So,
here.
so I really really appreciate that, Clay. Um so one of the first things, that we had come up with, and a lot of these kind of questions, like we've organized to get you to kind of thinking once you've made the ultimate decision, like, you know what, I definitely want to start fishing. Before you just jump into it, which is probably the worst thing you can do because you're probably going to blow mortgage money at that point. I mean, it's expensive, isn't it, Angie?
It can be,
I
for
mean,
sure.
right. I mean,
If
even if you know what it is you want to buy,
hmm
don't go in no Bass Pro or Cabela's or and say, "Hi, I kind of want to start getting into fishing. You know, could you help me?" Like,
well, depending on the associate and their level of knowledge, and if Clay was working at Bass Pro, then you might be all
well,
right.
yeah, well, I don't know. I'm thinking, are they on commission? Because if they're on commission, then you know that's what you don't want to do. But it's just like these questions are organized for you to kind of go through um the thinking process to put you kind of where you want to be by the time you start making purchases, so that you don't go out and buy a whole bunch of stuff that you don't need, basically is kind of what we're saying, because that is a bad spot to be in. So the first thing is kind of like identifying, you know, who you're going to be fishing with. Are you going to be fishing alone? Are you going to be taking a kid with you? um, because that's going to be a huge deciding factor at that point. Um, like, I mean, what are your thoughts on that, Angie? Like, as far as, y- you know, when you're in that stage of your decision, like, what would you be thinking in that very first decision? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I think that's a good question to ask. Is when you're thinking about taking the next step, you kind of need to have a plan. If you're going to be going out by yourself, are you going to have a little kid with you? Are you going with some friends? Like, that's going to kind of base, what kind of gear you need to get, where you're going to go, that sort of thing. That's kind of the next step. So it's not really something I've really thought about, because
mhm,
I'm game to do whatever. I'll go fishing by myself. I'll go with somebody. I'll take a kid with me.
right.
Whatever. But um, but yeah, that question is good to start with.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like a really good beginning, question to ask. And I mean, ask your friends to go. Like, even if it's not something that they're completely into, like they might be, it's something they might be able to get into. But just kind of, feel that out and see what your options are for that. Obviously, if you have kids, that's a very good option for you. I swear I was at a pond. This is no lie. And I was still in the car in the parking lot, and I see a guy fishing. It was 98 degrees today,
Mm.
and I see a guy fishing in the pond, and then I see his kid in a stroller under a shade tree. And I'm like, well, whatever you got to do. But it was kind of cute. He obviously wanted to fish real bad.
Yeah,
But
at least the kid wasn't in the car.
is a very good point. Thank God. Oh Lord. So that would be the first thing. The next kind of question that you would run through would be like, okay, what are my options for places to fish? And this is going to vary, obviously, depending on where you live. And some people are a lot luckier than others. Um, like Angie. Yeah,
Literally on a lake right now.
right. She can go sit in a lawn chair on the dock and fish off the dock. Take her boat out and go fish. She's not new to fishing, but um, I mean, people up north, they have a lot of deeper lakes, and I don't know what their pond situations are and stuff. Like I keep thinking the ice fishing. Um but you came from up north. Like what are some of your
Well, we just have tons of lakes. I mean, the land of 10,000 lakes. I've actually heard, I think Wisconsin has more lakes than Minnesota, but that's where we went, is just, hitting the local lakes. Sometimes we make a little longer trips as a family and go to some different lakes to check them out. We'd take a vacation up north every summer, just about, and spend a whole week up on a lake where the fishing's a little better way up north because it's not as pressured as closer to where we were, which is more of a suburban area. Um, and so that's kind of where we fished. We actually had a comment come in from Ingalls Glover, and he said, "Brim busters and popping bugs on the golf course is how I learned anything about fishing as a kid." So his access was those waterways on the golf courses. So that's kind of interesting.
Is that
There's,
legal though?
I would think so. I mean, I guess the golf course could kick you off, but
Hey
uh,
John.
and
John
then
just
we have a lot of something that's becoming more popular now is urban fishing. So people that live in downtown settings, there's often waterways downtown that you have access to, like canals and rivers, and so we had a family member of somebody else on our dock visiting just a couple weeks ago, and I was going to try to get a interview with him on the podcast because he's from New York City, and so he's obsessed with fishing, and that's where he fishes. So that's, if you're in an urban setting, there's even opportunities to fish there. I think
so
somebody did a whole TV series about that recently. It might have been Mike Iaconelli. I
I
can't
was gonna
remember.
say, he always like you'll see videos of him like fishing in a sewer.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, I've seen it, and I've always wondered, is that real?
I think it is. I don't know if you'd wanna eat those fish.
No, I would definitely would not. I mean, I don't like fish anyway, but no,
You might
I
you might
no.
catch one with 3 eyes, but
Yeah,
it's
I
still fishing.
I but I really do want to watch I want to see it with my own eyes. The bait go in the sewer without a fish and it come back out. Like I want to see it because I don't know.
A really great resource is to find places to fish is takemefishing.org. They
Okay.
have lots of information on their website too for beginning fisher people. I'm actually going to be down at ICAST. I'm talking to them now about doing some stuff for the podcast with them while we're down there. And I might get the opportunity to fish the Disney chain of lakes with a guide while I'm down there. Which they have some
Nice.
huge bass in the Disney chain, so I'm excited about that.
That would
But
be awesome.
but yeah, everybody should check out takemefishing.org as a good resource to find places to fish in your area.
Okay. I'm going to check
And
that
fishing
out.
licenses too. I don't guess we covered that, but they have information about fishing licenses. That's something it varies state to state. A lot of times states will have free fishing weekends
Mhm.
where you don't need a license to fish, or days where like kids under a certain age fish for free, or some even have all the time. If a kid's under a certain age, they don't have to have a license. So there's different rules and regulations per state. So
Mhm.
takemefishing.org also has all that information on their website.
Yep. And I'm glad that you mentioned that because I would hate for somebody to just go out fishing and not even give that a thought. Um, because yes, you do need a fishing license. If you're an adult, you have to have one. And you will get checked at some point, especially if you don't have one. That is the time you will get checked. And they will ticket you. I see people getting ticketed all the time. You would probably get out of a speeding ticket before you will get out of a ticket for fishing without a license. And that's even if you're throwing them back and you're not keeping them. Um, the fishing game don't play. I mean, that's just the way that it is. So definitely check that out. I will put that link in the description when the show wraps up. Um, so that we can make sure that everybody's squared away with that, um, because yeah, that would not be good. um, so let me.
And another tip is Google Maps, or go online and like search your area, and you'll be able to see right on there the bodies of water, or Google Earth. Look in anywhere you see bodies of water. That's what I did when I was down in Florida, because I was looking for some freshwater fishing options while I was down there to try to get some bass. And so I just pulled up my location, kind of zoomed in, and I could see all the little neighborhoods that had ponds. And then you can look and see, okay, does this look like it's private access only, or does it look like there's some public options? I found some parks that had pretty good sized ponds that were public.
Mhm.
So using Google Earth, and you can find little streams and things like that that maybe you've lived there your whole life but you didn't know those existed. Those would be good places to check out and see if you have access to be able to do some fishing there.
Mhm. and and definitely check before you just go because um like you said, like with the neighborhoods and stuff, like some of them are really strict, some of them aren't. And some of them are open to the public and they really don't care. I don't know what the rules are with the golf courses. Maybe it's a Kentucky thing, I don't know. But in Kentucky, I know that there's nice fish in the Kentucky golf courses. I ain't going. I just stay off of them. Um and the I know farm ponds, unless it's a family member, a friend of a friend, and they're with me, I'm not going. And it's tough because the public parks, they are they're fished a lot. Um, but there's nice fish in there. Um, but you've got to work for them.
Hmm.
So just make sure that you do research what where it is that you're going so that you don't get into a mess.
Oh,
you
hold
know
on, sorry. Trying to ask Engels. Let me see if I can. Can't seem to reply to his comment because I don't know if he's still watching. But I'm just curious what the circumstances were for him being able to fish that golf course as a kid. If maybe he had a parent
Well,
that worked there, or
I mean, usually if there's a kid, you know they're a
not
lot
gonna
better.
kick you off.
Right. um Fancy Pants Fishing, she says, as a total beginner, I recommend entering all the contests too. It helps build your collection and you're able to try all sorts of different things. Yeah, that's true. And there's like online tournaments, and there's all kinds of different things, and all of the networking and stuff, between all of the different social media sites. And when I was growing up, when Angie was growing up and trying to learn how to fish, we didn't have all of this information at our disposal. We really did have to rely on our family. Like that was our information. And so we're kind of going back, or we've had gone back to try to learn this, over the years. And um it's very humbling. I mean, that's really all I can say. Um, you know, Fishing will humble you very, very quick. And like I'm since I've been going to the ponds to do that's where I go um to like test baits and to, like new rods and reels and stuff like that. And anybody who thinks that it's easy to catch fish, bass out of a pond, go try it.
One kind of along those lines of what Fancy Pants is saying is there's also these subscription boxes out there now that you can subscribe to. I don't know if I would recommend that for a beginner though, because you get so much stuff and it's all just totally different that I think it might be a little overwhelming to do a subscription box. Unless they had, I don't know if there's a company out there that has one that's tailored for beginners. um, I know I did the mystery tackle box for bass for just a couple months to try it out, and just in those 2 months, I got so much stuff. I still got most of it in unopened packages because it's techniques I've never done before, or it's crazy looking stuff, and I think that could maybe be a little too overwhelming for somebody who's just starting out. But it is
Yeah.
a good way to build up a variety of stuff.
Yeah.
So, and you can do species specific boxes. You can select that, and then they have different, for different styles, crappie and other species. But just to
Mm.
throw that out
Well,
there.
and I mean, if you think about it, like what Pam Martin Wells said, it's kind of like, you have to be willing to fish outside of your comfort zone. And when you're starting out, everything is outside of your comfort zone. You don't really know what your comfort zone is just yet, or what your strength is. Um, so I, I mean it I could see it going either way, and it probably depends on the person, you know. But like you said, with it being species specific, I would probably wait until I've at least honed in on the majority of what it is I want to target. Um,
Hmm.
and it, I would think that it just seems like most people target bass. Um, that like even a lot of the questions that were coming in to me it looked like that's kind of where, even with us, like that's where this is kind of going. Except there were several that it looked like were going to go, um, teaching the kids route.
Hmm.
Uh,
Which in
so
that case, you're going to be going after panfish. I mean,
right,
that's going to be the. And when we say panfish, some people might not know what that means, but we're talking the smaller fish like brim or sunfish, crappie, perch, as Clay mentioned.
hmm,
Those are kind of what I think of when I think of panfish. Maybe I don't know. I never grew up trout fishing, so I don't know a whole lot about it. But trout fishing might be good for kids as well, depending on where you're at and what the
right,
population's like.
bluegill,
Yeah,
you
bluegill,
know,
sunfish, brim, whatever you
and
call them,
yeah.
shell crackers.
I, now that's one we don't use up here. Up
Mm.
here we don't call them shell crackers. But no, that is funny though. The the basically if the fish that sit there and like nip at your line, or you know, those are the ones that we're talking about. But I mean, they are fun, you
If
know, to
you're
catch.
fishing inshore or the Gulf, pinfish, I call them the bait stealers of the Gulf. They're
Yes.
terrible.
I
Um,
I I used to say like at the end of the day I would have a Flappy Daddy graveyard at the bottom of the boat, because I would just have, I mean, packs of them just laying there in the bottom of the boat with one leg. Because the bluegill had done just ripped one leg off, and there went a whole pack of them, you know, that quick.
Speaking of, I need to get some ordered before the next tournament. My stock is getting pretty low.
Yep, and you know how quick they'll go out, and
Uh huh.
I won't be there to
I know.
to be like, here you
I
go.
almost panicked this last tournament, but I didn't end up catching anything, so it didn't matter. I
Well, and
had
they
plenty.
yeah, and they weren't biting on it anyway.
No.
So, okay, so after you have identified, you know, some of the different places that you know that you can go, um, you know, then you have to be realistic about, okay, what kind of fish are actually there that I'm going to be able to catch. You know, like I can't, i- in my area, I'm not as blessed as a lot of the ladies that I fish with, as the waters that they have to fish. My area sucks. I have to drive a really, basically a couple of hours to have access to good waters. Um, so a lot of my waters are like trolling motor only. They don't have a good population of fish. Um, they have good size in there for bass, but they don't have good numbers. Um, but realistic for my area, I couldn't say like, oh, well, I'm going to go out and trout fish today in my 90-degree water. You know, like that's just unrealistic. You know, so you have to know the area and say, you know, I could go and I could target bass, or I could target sunfish, or you know, or striper, you know, like the white bass, or you know, white bass are super aggressive. They're really fun to catch, but they are a pain in the butt in a tournament. They make me so mad in a tournament. You know, or catfish. I mean, I don't think there's a bad place in the country to catfish fish, is there?
Not,
I mean,
I mean, I haven't been everywhere, but it seems like wherever I've fished, there's been
yeah,
catfish.
yeah,
Um, so for me, like when I first started out fishing, we just really did not care what kind of fish we caught, as long as we caught something. And that, so like growing up, it was bluegill or sunfish. um, crappie, perch, bullheads, which were the catfish. Um, we didn't keep the perch because I guess they were wormy or something where we were.
Oh.
Yeah, the bluegill or the bullheads we kind of thought of as trash fish, but they were fun for kids to catch because they're bigger, you know.
Right.
Um, and so we most places where we fish, it was just a variety of fish every time, and it didn't matter what spot you're in. We would just try to find a spot with fish. We were on a boat, so my dad had the old school style fish finder, not like the kinds we got today where we can actually see the fish swimming across the screen.
Right.
But you know, we would just kind of target those areas and cast our bobbers out with typically night crawlers or leeches we fish with up there sometimes, and minnows were kind of the three main live baits that we used. And you'd seem like you'd always get something, you know.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I think that most of us are all going to have like a certain species that we want, that we're kind of driven to go after. Um, I those of us that choose bass, like that, we could have like a psyche eval done on us because I mean, seriously, like those of us that choose to go after bass, I mean, it's a lot about the puzzle, the competition, the figuring stuff out because it's difficult. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of that in it, you know, and people who are new coming into the sport, you know, you have all the options in front of you to figure out what it is that you want to do, how you like to fish. Um, do you want to sit there on the bank in a chair with a beer and hold your pole and not move it and just wait for something to bite? Or do you want to make cast after cast after cast after cast after cast after cast after cast and be out there for 8 hours hoping to get 3 or 4 bites, maybe five? Like it really depends. And that's something that, that you're going to have to decide on. I'm really selling bass fishing, ain't I?
Yeah.
I love it. That's the crazy thing is I love bass fishing. I really do. So once you go through the process of that, then you're going to kind of start putting that puzzle together, and you're going to kind of go into that like, okay, well, now that I've gone through all that, what would I like to start fishing for based on the places to fish and the species available? Which, I mean, yes, that makes like like a very logical question to come to, and it seems like it's something that's very easy to answer. But I mean, Angie, if you were brand new in fishing, like going through this step by step like question, like if you got to this, don't you think that you would still be like, well, I don't know, I might like to
Yeah, for sure. And that's
check
kind
a
of what
few
I
things
touched
out?
that's what I kind of touched on earlier is you know, when growing up, we just really didn't care. We just wanted to catch something, you know. It was fun just to catch fish. So, I've got a couple spots here locally that I think about. There's a park here on the lake called Long Hunter State Park, and they have a designated fishing area off the bank. And I remember going there when I first moved here, and you don't know what kind of fish live there, off that bank. So I would kind of fish like I did growing up, and it seemed like every time I go out there, I'd catch a fish, but it was almost always a different species every time.
Yep.
So I'd get a bluegill one time, I'd get a white bass the next time, I'd get a largemouth occasionally, catfish. It's just all sorts of fish live in that area, and so there's a lake here, a little lake north of Nashville called Marrowbone Lake, and I used to drive up there and fish. They have a designated fishing area with piers, and it was the same thing there. Every time it was just a different fish, and one time they had just stocked catfish. What do you call them? The little ones, the fingerlings, or what are they called when they're real little? Well, whatever. It was like they had just stocked them, and so every cast I was bringing in these little bitty catfish. And then they have trout and the shell crackers in that lake too. So it was just fun. I didn't really care. I didn't have like,
Right.
okay, I'm only targeting catfish. I'm gonna fish, like I said, it's the way I grew
Right.
up, and whatever I catch, I catch. And then that's how you kind of learn. I mean, you can do some research online and Google the lake and see what species live in that lake and what the forage is, and kind of have that information before you go. But once you start fishing, that's when you really start to figure out what's there. Then you kind of start to figure out, okay, well, I love catching catfish. Like, that's so much fun to me. Or I love catching the white bass or whatever. And you kind of start to have your favorites, and then you can start dialing in and focusing on that going as you progress.
Right. And I mean, I I don't know, maybe it's just because I've always mostly bass fished that I've just kind of been a snob when it comes to like to fishing, Like I've just kind of always just focused mostly on that. Um and the ponds that I go to around here, you know, there's m- most people are fishing for catfish, and actually a lot of people, they even carp fish,
Mm,
um
it's a
which
species we hadn't really mentioned, but carp can be a ton of fun.
oh I mean, I need to get a video of some of these hosses that I see swimming around
Mhm.
because I, I mean huge. And you know what, maybe I'll go fishing for them one day. I'll just get my heavy rod and make me some dough balls, because they just swim around the top of the water column. I mean, I guess that would work. I don't know, but that's
Uh,
what I've
a
always heard was dough balls.
a trick I learned is you go buy Wheaties cereal. It has to be Wheaties. It can't be the generic. And then
Right.
you crush them up. You roll them into you add some water, and you roll them into a little dime-sized ball,
Yep.
and wrap them in a paper towel, put them in the fridge. Sometimes it's hard to keep them together, but it does make a pretty good paste. And then you just put that on the hook, and the carp like go crazy over that. I tried it with the generic Wheaties before, and it just did not work. So I think it has to be the real. It's a little expensive for a whole box of Wheaties these days, but um, it, it works pretty well to catch some monster carp.
Well, and what people here do is they see, I didn't hear about doing the whole fridge, but that makes total sense. But and maybe they do it, I don't know. But putting it like the Wheaties, and they put it in a like a pair of hose, like
Hmm.
women's hose,
Mm.
which makes like a bait sack, and then they put honey on top, like in it, to, I guess, to help pack it, and they cover it with red pop soda, and it just I maybe carp like red pop soda. I don't know if it's the flavor, the trail, the smell. I don't know what it is, but that's interesting. Now I'm totally curious. It'll probably snap that heavy rod right in half, but Um,
Troy Lindner, he's Al Lindner's son. Al's a big, famous professional TV personality, fisherman. He had In Fisherman magazine. Um, they invented the Lindy rig, which is super popular. But anyway, Troy grew up, of course, fishing walleye and whatnot with the family, and bass too. But he is huge into carp fishing. If you follow him on Instagram, he travels all over the world, and he loves carp fishing, and he does a lot of that urban fishing as well.
I mean, and I mean, the only reason that anybody would carp fish would, I mean, it's just the fight. Nobody eats them, do they?
I've heard the Asian carp are good to eat, which
Oh,
is good to get them out of the system since they're wreaking all sorts of havoc. But I did a whole episode on Asian carp on the podcast with a lady up in Illinois, and she talked about all the different ways that you can prepare Asian carp, and they have festivals and tournaments where people catch them and then they cook them and they prepare them. They make fish tacos and however way you could possibly think to prepare fish.
yeah.
So, that's definitely an exception, but I don't hear too much of people eating other kinds of carp.
Yeah.
So,
Of course, people were also making the cicadas a delicatessen too. And did you guys have them down there?
not really. I never really noticed many. I just saw a picture up in Minnesota. My cousin posted at a gas station, and the gas pump was just completely covered with cicadas. It was
Oh,
crazy.
we had them really bad. And I don't think there was anything living, like as far as animals, that didn't eat them. You could see like birds just coming and taking them like out of the midair, squirrels. I mean, just everything ate them. Ugh. But yeah, it was gross. But so while everybody, for those of you that find yourself like in this situation, now that you've kind of got like the wheels turning on these questions, I know the next logical question is this. And we're going to say just hold off on this. I mean, I'm not saying like no, don't go buy anything, but you know, this is kind of where I guess I don't know what would you say, Angie? I know I know what I want to say, um, but I think that this is kind of, I don't know, where people can kind of get into trouble when it
It
comes to fishing.
depends. Yeah, it depends on what your mindset is going into it. But I just think back to when I was a kid, and I think it was my fourth or fifth Christmas, I guess it was. I got, my rod reel combo that I think it was well, I think for some reason I feel like the brand was Johnson. I mean, it doesn't really matter. A lot of kids start off with the Barbie pole, or the Star Wars pole, or for boys or whatever. Just depending. But get a simple rod reel combo. You can start with the closed one, or you can go with the spinning reel. I wouldn't go with a bait caster for sure.
Yeah.
Um, and then they have these starter tackle box kits that have the bobbers and the hooks and all that stuff. And I mean, that's the way I started. So that's
Hmm.
kind of what I'm thinking. Clay's suggestion earlier in the show,
For
not
the kid.
something I ever thought about until I had heard him mention it recently. So, that's an option too if you want to start there, and really get that hook set down before you start having to worry about fiddling with the reel. That's great for kids because we did a kids fishing day a couple years ago with my local bass club, where some kids came out from the Boys and Girls Associate Club, and we had Luz had donated a bunch of rod reel combos, and they were spinning rods and reels, and so the kids got to take these home with them. But one thing I thought about is, the first time that reel gets tangled up, they're not going to know how to fix it unless they have a parent who has some fishing experience. But I'm sure a lot of these kids' parents probably have never fished before. And so it's like, yeah, it's great we're giving them this to take home so they have something and hopefully can go out fishing on their own. But there's just a lot more to it. So kind of being more simple, like what Clay was talking about, I mean, that might be the best
Mhm.
option to start off with.
Right.
And then as you progress, you can move up to that, and
Right.
that's just kind of my thoughts.
And we can, you know, like I can look up some, different ideas and stuff like that of, if I can find anything. But I guess I just want to caution people because it does get exciting, and your instinct is like, oh, I just want to, go and get everything and go catch everything I can right now. Like when I, you know, like finished college and really got back into fishing again, like I was, you know, full steam ahead. I wanted everything, and it's just, you'll probably end up buying a lot of stuff that you might not ever use, so it's just something to think about, and we'll cover some more things on the next episode where we kind of will go into the next step. And remember that you can go ahead, you can email the show, which is women's world of fishing at gmail.com. um, and before we sign off here, I did want to mention, um, I think this is amazing, and this goes to show, ladies, you younger girls that um, that are coming up, and this is for the high school girls. Cricket Coates and Michaela Schmid. Oh, I don't want to mess up her last name. Michaela Schmidjall. Cricket is from Florida. Michaela is from California. So, two different high school teams. They're both getting ready to go to the national championships. Um, they're having like different qualifications, because I think that Michaela is going to the Mississippi River in Rapid City, Illinois, and Cricket is going somewhere in Tennessee. At any rate, financially, these high schools, they don't have a lot of money to send these kids to go and do these tournaments. So I'm going to post the link in the comments where we always post the stuff for the show. And if you can, every dollar helps these kids. And, it is just now to the point where, at first it was college kids, and we were so excited to have, college fishing, and to see high school kids now doing this, and for there to be girls that are on high school teams, and we have two girls that are going to the national championships. This is awesome. So, like I said, if you can, even just a couple of bucks, support Michaela and Cricket's teams to get to their national championships. That would be phenomenal. If you can't, I know it's rough times, so I completely understand. We just wanted to throw it out there, and show our support for our two girls. So that's all I have for tonight.
There's another cool thing going on for ICAST. They do the ICAST Cup. I don't know if you're aware of that, Barbara. I'm
Mm,
gonna try to pull it up really quick so I get the information correct. But with the ICAST Cup, they're doing a cool thing this year where, let's see if I can get it. Um, let's see, something about the women's team. Of course, it's not coming up now. But basically, like, there's some all women's teams fishing this ICAST Cup, and whoever wins gets to go to like the whatever it is, the big like represent the US team in the tournament. I wish I could get more info right now. Oh, here
Wow.
we go. The highest finishing team of 2 female anglers will earn a spot on Team USA Bass alongside with Jacob Wheeler, John Cox, Mark Daniels Jr., Dustin Connell, Brian Latimer, Scott Martin, and other top pros. So I think at least one of our LBA ladies is fishing that. Can't remember who it is off the top
Yes.
of my head. I thought it was Shannon Wells, but I went back to look at her page and I didn't see anything about it, so it might not be correct.
I actually do remember seeing a post about that, and I don't remember who it was. Why is multiple of our females not fishing that?
I want to. I'm getting in that morning of the tournament, but I'm flying down, so that would be a little bit challenging because, well, one, I'm not going to have my boat, so I would have to find another lady who's looking for a co-angler. But then also, I won't really have a whole lot of gear with me either. But it would be fun. I'm actually looking at changing my flight to the day before now, because there's a dinner I want to go to that night, with the takemefishing.org, the Women Making Waves ladies. So we'll see.
Hey, we could both fly in and get a oh my gosh, I'm going brain dead. Your sponsor, your main sponsor.
Freedom Boat Club, or
Yes, one of their boats. All we need is a couple of poles each and Flappy Daddies and Cincos. That's all we need.
yeah, we'll win the tournament. And I checked that lake they're fishing the tournament on, and there's not a Freedom Boat Club, believe it or not. There's not a Freedom Boat Club location on that lake, so unfortunately, I don't think that would work. I did
Is,
think about that.
is it close to Okeechobee?
No, it's not. It's Orlando area because
Oh,
that's where ICAST is.
Can you could you
Or,
imagine if we won and we had to go represent Team USA? we
well,
we
that
would
would be
we'd be like, yeah.
the
Oh,
irony.
I know that would actually be it would be great, but we'd be like, "Oh yeah, we won." That's funny.
Now
Oh
what?
man. Oh, well, I don't have anything else. I guess we'll call it a night. And everybody, like I said, just send any more follow-up questions to womensworldofishing@gmail.com. And we will do the follow-up to this show on a week from tonight.
All right, sounds good. See you then.
All righty. We will catch up. Everybody have a good night. Mwah.
Good night.